Hey everybody, welcome back for another discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. Before we get started, if somebody in the chat can just let me know if the sound is okay, because in a panic over a spider, I knocked my interface off my desk the other week, and I'm hoping it still works okay. So if you can't hear anything or the sound's too low, please let me know. I can try to turn it up. Um, but otherwise, we'll get started. Um, so today we've got, and for anybody who's new, this is the copy that I'm using, Stephen Mitchell's translation. You're welcome to use whatever translation you like, but this is just what we're going to use. So you may find translations that have a different way of phrasing things, and it can be helpful to read multiple translations just to get some clarity, especially on some of the more difficult passages that might require a little bit more in-depth thought. Some of the translations also come with commentaries as well. Regarding ones with commentaries, they can be helpful. I do advise maybe reading the Gita on its own first before you let other people's opinions of what it means enter your mind. It's a good idea to just think about what it means to you first. So we are on chapter 8, Absolute Freedom today. So we'll start with just reading it out. It's a pretty short chapter, and then we'll kind of go back over and discuss it a little bit more in depth before we go to questions. So Arjuna said, "What is this absolute freedom, Krishna? What is the self? What is the true nature of action and the nature of beings and gods? Teach me the way of worship, what it is here in the body, and how at the hour of death can a man be with you in spirit." The blessed Lord said, "Freedom is union with the deathless. The self is the essence of all things. Its creative power, called action, causes the whole world to be. About beings, know that they die. About gods, know the Supreme Person, and know that true worship is I myself here in this body. Whoever in his final moments thinks of me only is sure to enter my state of being once his body is dead. Whatever the state of being that a man may focus upon at the end, when he leaves his body, to that state of being he will go. Therefore, Arjuna, meditate on me at all times and fight with your whole mind intent on me. You will come to me, never doubt it. Strong in the practice of yoga, with a mind that is rooted in me and in nothing else, you will reach the Supreme Person that I am. Meditate on the guide, the giver of all, the primordial poet, smaller than an atom, unthinkable, brilliant as the sun. If you do this at the hour of your death with an unmoving mind, drawing your breath up between your eyebrows, you will reach the person that I am. I will teach you about the state called the eternal, the absolute, which those who strive toward me enter desireless, freed from attachments. Closing the 9 gates of the body, keeping the attention in the heart, drawing the breath to the forehead with the mind absorbed, one pointed, uttering the sacred Om, which itself is freedom, focused on me as you leave the body, you attain the ultimate goal. For men whose minds are forever focused on me, whose love has grown deep through meditation, I am easy to reach, Arjuna. Reaching me, these great souls attain the supreme perfection and no longer are reborn in this fleeting world of sorrow and pain. All realms up to the realm of Brahma are subject to rebirth, but those who attain me, Arjuna, will never be reborn again. If you know that one single day or one single night of Brahma lasts more than 4 billion years, you understand day and night. When day comes, all things emerge from the depths of unmanifest nature. When night comes, all things dissolve into the unmanifest again. Oh, somebody's saying I don't have the right mic. Let me just check. Sorry to interrupt. No, it should be the right mic, but let's turn it up a little bit. Is that any better? Hopefully that's better. Let me back up again. Audio is buzzing. Oh, goodness me. It's not even Mercury retrograde. How's that? Let me know if that's better. Stupid technical problems interrupting. Okay, still buzzing? I'm not sure what might be going on. I hope it's not because of this broke when I dropped it. They're fairly robust, though, I have to say. I mean, I didn't drop it that hard. I'll try to speak up anyway. So let me back up again a little bit. If you know that one single day or one single night of Brahma lasts more than 4 billion years, you understand day and night. When day comes, all things emerge from the depths of unmanifest nature. When night comes, all things dissolve into the unmanifest again. These multitudes of beings, in an endless beginningless cycle, helplessly dissolve when Brahma's night comes and emerge once more at his dawn. But beyond this unmanifest nature is another unmanifest state, a primal existence that is not destroyed when all things dissolve. This is the eternal unmanifest and is called the ultimate goal. Men who reach this, my supreme dwelling, are never reborn. This supreme person, Arjuna, who contains all beings and extends to the limit of all that is, can be reached by wholehearted devotion. Now, Arjuna, I will tell you the times at which men of yoga die and must be reborn, or die never to return. Fire, light, day, the moon's brightness, the 6 months of the north turning sun. Dying then, men who are free go to absolute freedom. Smoke, gloom, night, the moon's darkness, the 6 months of the south turning sun. Dying then, men of yoga reach the moon's light and return. These paths of light and darkness have always existed. By one, a man will escape from rebirth. By the other, he is born again. Knowing these two paths, Arjuna, the man of yoga at all times, resolute in his non-attachment, goes far beyond the merit gained from the study of scriptures, from acts of worship or control or charity. Dying, he reaches the supreme primordial place. All right, so let's go back over some of these. Yes, there is another machine on, John. It's the air conditioner. It's incredibly hot and humid, so suck it up. That's all I can say because I'm not turning it off. All right, so I'm glad you guys can hear me now. Anyway, let me know if any other problems come up. I'm very sorry about that. So backing up again to the start of the chapter. So Krishna is saying freedom is union with the deathless. The self is the essence of all things. Its creative power called action causes the whole world to be. So when he's talking about freedom is union with the deathless, he's basically saying union with the infinite and eternal God. And he says, whoever in his final moments thinks only of me is sure to enter my state of being once his body is dead. Whatever the state of being that a man may focus upon at the end when he leaves his body, to that state of being he will go. So Krishna is saying that whoever remembers and thinks only of him at their time of death will attain a godlike character. So the state of consciousness at your death and whatever your mind is absorbed in at that moment will determine your next rebirth to some extent. It's not the only factor, but it's a big one. And so this is why Krishna instructs Arjuna to meditate upon him at all times and to fight with his mind focused only on God. But it's not enough to only think of God on your deathbed. It needs to be a lifelong habit. So the moment of death is said to be, very traumatic and overwhelming. You might forget what you know. So the habit patterns of our thoughts in life carve channels in the same way that water cuts a river through stone. The more times that water follows a certain path, the deeper that riverbed becomes. And so it is also with our thoughts. We're in the rainy season here, and every time we get a torrential downpour, it's starting now to carve a big ditch next to my house, because every time it rains, the water wants to go where it once flowed before. And the more it flows that way, the easier it becomes for water to go that way, to the point that it will no longer go anywhere else. And so when we have habit patterns in our mind and we are thinking in the same way over and over, that's effectively what we're doing. We're carving these channels of thought that the more we follow that channel, the harder it is ever to carve another pathway for our thoughts. So if you've got these channels cut deeply in your mind at the moment of death, well, that's where the thoughts will flow. So, the more we think a certain way or about certain topics, the more the mind wants to flow in that direction. So if you're not habitually accustomed to keeping your mind on God, then it's unlikely that you'll be able to do it in that traumatic moment of death. And the things you think about the most will be the things that enter your mind as you die. So, for example, if you think a lot about, maybe you think a lot about girls and sex and how to get girls and sex, or feeling sorry for yourself because you don't get them. When you die, those cravings will predominate in your mind, and your next birth will be directed around those cravings. So it's this kind of stuff that lures us back into material life. We don't keep our eye on the prize, and so we get tricked into thinking that we want more of this material life because our material cravings weren't ever satisfied. So, I've got bad news for you, because material cravings are never going to be satisfied. And even when you get what you want, you'll find some reason why you want something else instead, or you want it to be better, or you want more of it. It ends up dominating the mind. And so thinking of God at the moment of death is said to be really difficult. In order to do this, your inner nature essentially needs to be aligned with God, so that whatever thoughts arise in the mind are a manifestation of this inner nature, and therefore the mind is always thinking of God. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like that was a little bit of a circular route that we took, but hopefully you stuck with me for it. So he goes on to say, therefore, Arjuna, meditate on me at all times and fight with your whole mind intent on me. You will come to me, never doubt it. So there's another translation of this verse that I like a little bit better, and it goes something like, therefore always remember me and also do your duty of fighting in the war. In other words, you do your earthly duties with your body, but you keep the mind always attached to God. Whatever your duty is in life right now, remember God as you go about those tasks. Whether you're a student or a parent or a farmer or a dentist or whatever, even sitting here watching YouTube, even if you're not watching a Bhagavad Gita stream, just keep your mind, stay mindful of God as you do that. There's this misconception maybe that you need to disregard your worldly duties in order to lead a spiritual life, or that our responsibilities in the world are an excuse to avoid a spiritual life. But a spiritual life is just simply one where you keep your mind fixed on God always. And what you're doing in your day-to-day life, as long as you're keeping your mind focused and you're not, we've talked before about how when you do your duties without attachment to results, then those attachments accrue no karma. You guys might remember that. So because Arjuna fights in the war without attachments to any worldly achievements he might gain, he accrues no karma for his deeds in the war. But the moment you forget God, then your mind gets taken over by desire, greed, hatred, envy, anger. All of the agents of Maya come to pull you back into illusion. So there's two conditions. One, you should be thinking of God while doing any work. And two, you want the remembrance of God to be a constant thing and not just something that you do intermittently when you set aside the time for it. It's not really enough to meditate on God for 15 minutes a day and then not think of him at all the rest of the day. So Krishna says, closing the 9 gates of the body, keeping the attention in the heart, drawing the breath to the forehead, with the mind absorbed, one pointed. So these 9 gates are the sense organs. I think we might have mentioned that before. Krishna is saying, don't be distracted by the senses. We've already talked about this a lot, right? It's through the senses and the sense objects that the world of illusion enters our minds, and the mind then dwells on these sensory experiences, and it increases our attachment to the illusory world of Maya. So, one of the purposes of meditation is to train the mind to guard against the incessant stream of thoughts that are induced by our experiences of the sensory world, which, we can't escape the sensory world, right? So we need to guard against it. When you close yourself off to the sensory experiences, then the mind can dwell in the heart. It can be attached to God. He goes on to say, uttering the sacred Om, which itself is freedom, focused on me as you leave the body, you gain the ultimate goal. So according to the Vedas, God first created sound, and that primordial sound was Om. It's the sound of manifestation, and it's really similar to the Bible verse that speaks about, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I might not be saying it exactly the way it's written, but hopefully you guys know which one I'm talking about. So the sound of Om is said to pervade the entire universe, like all of creation. It's an infinite sound, just like God. So, if you want to try it on your own, chanting it, which there's 3 syllables to it. There's 3 sounds. Sorry, not syllables. It's 1 syllable, 3 sounds. There's the A, the U, and the M. So first you get the Ah sound, which kind of resonates in your chest, and then you get the Oo, which is resonating down in your belly, and then the which is sort of buzzing up in your head. So you want to kind of do the and you want to feel the vibration as you do that over and over. So that's what Krishna is saying, that we should chant this sound and stay focused on him as we leave our bodies. Death is really kind of the ultimate test of your meditation practice, really. So, and I want to reiterate that your meditation practice need not be something like sitting and chanting on beads or focusing on your breath for hours and hours. It's about maintaining a constant awareness of God. I don't personally believe that you must do some kind of formal meditation to achieve this. It's a tool that you can use. Maybe it doesn't work for you. And if it doesn't, I don't personally think it's the end of the world. Think about God at the grocery store. Think of God when you're at work. Think of God when you play sports, whatever. That's the meditation. It's about keeping God fixed in your mind first and foremost, practicing those non-attachments to results. So meditation can help with this, but it's not the be-all, end-all. And I know some people who follow this channel have written to me expressing their frustration with meditation and their inability to really get into it and feeling like they don't know what they're doing. Like, if that's you, don't stress about it. It's not, it's a great tool, but not every tool works well for every person. It's kind of like, if you have a road bike, it's not the best for mountain biking, and maybe you're a mountain biker. Okay, so you need a mountain bike, not a road bike. And that means you need a different tool other than meditation. Keep practicing, if you want to, but I'm not ever going to tell anybody not to meditate. But I would say, if it's a problem for you, you're struggling, you just don't like it. Like, some people just are too antsy for it. They need something else to do. And there are other options. I don't think it has to be like this formal sitting meditation. So anyway, he says, reaching me, these great souls attain the supreme perfection and are no longer reborn in this fleeting world of sorrow and pain. All realms up to the realm of Brahma are subject to rebirth, but those who attain me, Arjuna, will never be reborn again. So Krishna is saying that until you achieve the ultimate goal of reunion with God, you will be continually subject to death and rebirth, whether that's in higher or lower realms in this one. And, all those realms are subject to pain and misery, even the higher ones, because that's ultimately meant to help us develop our desire for God. You don't typically see people with really happy and comfortable material lives striving earnestly for God, right? It's often times that people only turn to God when they hit rock bottom. Obviously you can choose to turn to God before you get to that point too, but most people don't. Things get pretty bad in their life before they start reaching out to God. I kind of see it like God is not going to intervene in your life unless you ask for it. It's like trying to teach a little kid how to tie their shoes. They're old enough to start learning, but they're just not very good at it, and they're going to get frustrated and scream and throw tantrums. And if you rush in and try to help them and do it for them, they get even madder about it, right? So as a parent, you step back and you think, I've got to let them learn on their own. They'll never learn if I don't give them the opportunity to try to figure it out. And only when they ask you for help do you step in. So, it's not that God isn't there for you until you hit rock bottom. It's just that you didn't ask. So that's often when people feel motivated to ask, because now they're facing struggles that they feel they can't handle on their own. So the pain that we experience in the world is in fact really a sign that we need to correct our consciousness, because when we're suffering because of things that happen in this world, it's largely because of our attachment to material outcomes. So in the Vedic scriptures, there are 14 worlds in the universe, 7 planes which begin with the earth and go higher. Those are the celestial realms, and then 7 which are lower, which are the hellish realms. A lot of traditions speak of 7 realms of heaven, actually. There's just tons of numerological significance to 7, which isn't my specialty and is off on a tangent anyway. But all of these realms, even the heavenly realms, are subject to Maya. even the highest celestial abode of Brahma, Krishna says. He says all the realms up to the realm of Brahma are subject to rebirth. Brahma being the creator god. The Buddha even challenged Mara, the god of death, saying that even Brahma was conditioned existence and that he wished to go beyond that. So that basically means that even the celestial gods also die eventually, because they too are part of materiality. Only the ultimate unconditioned Godhead is not, and that's what we need to aim for. So, next page. So he says, if you know that one single day or one single night of Brahma lasts more than 4 billion years, you understand day and night. So just as a point of information, the Vedas use some pretty vast measurements of time. One single day for Brahma lasts more than 4 billion Earth years. Actually, 4,320,000,000 years. It's 100 Mahayugas. And a single Mahayuga is all 4 of the yugas added up, from the Sakya Yuga, or the Golden Age, down to the Kali Yuga and the Dark Age. So one single Mahayuga, an entire cycle of our earthly civilizations, is 4,320,000 years. And a single day of Brahma is 1,000 of those, and a single night, another 1,000 of those. So it's like if you went and told one of those insects that's basically born to just procreate immediately and die, that in one night its entire life cycle is equivalent to one of your nights. That would be inconceivable to the insect. It's similarly very hard for our human minds, with our limited lifespans, to conceptualize just how long that really is. And the lifespan of the universe is equal to Brahma's. He lives 100 Brahma years. So we're looking at over 311 trillion years. That's one life cycle of a Brahma and our universe. So, as I said, Brahma is the creator god, the manifestation of the unconditioned Godhead. So he too is subject to the cycle of life and death also. But when he dies, he's liberated and goes straight to the abode of God. Because obviously, if you're the lucky soul that gets to be Brahma in a cycle for a universe, then you must be pretty close to being spiritually liberated, right? So hopefully you would end up going to the abode of God after your time serving that. So he then says, when day comes, all things emerge from the depths of unmanifest nature. When night comes, all things dissolve into the unmanifest again. These multitudes of beings in an endless, beginningless cycle helplessly dissolve when Brahma's night comes and emerge once more at his dawn. So the entire universe dissolves at the end of Brahma's life. And Brahma's life is equivalent to one breath of Mahavishnu. So when Mahavishnu breathes in, all universes, not just ours, there's like an infinite number of universes, all universes are created when Mahavishnu breathes in, and they dissolve again when he breathes out. And just one breath of Mahavishnu is 100 years of Brahma's life. 311 plus trillion Earth years is just one breath of the ultimate God. That's crazy. It's hard to even conceptualize something so vast. And in each of these universes, they all have their own Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva and other gods and so on and so forth. So all of this creation emanates from Mahavishnu, which is not to be confused with regular Vishnu. On some level, they're non-different from each other, but regular Vishnu is manifested in part of the Trimurti, the preserver of the universe, and Mahavishnu is prior to that and creates all of that. I'm probably not the best person to explain this, but I want to just give a little bit of context for what Krishna is talking about here. So he says, but beyond this unmanifest nature is another unmanifest state, a primal existence that is not destroyed when all things dissolve. This is the eternal unmanifest and is called the ultimate goal. Men who reach this, my supreme dwelling, are never reborn. So Krishna has already talked a lot about how this material world is temporary and illusory, and now he's describing the eternal spiritual realm. And this realm does not dissolve with the material realms in the cycle of creation. If I remember right, later in the book, Krishna says that all of creation, only something like 1/4 of it is in the material realm, and the other 3/4 is in the eternal spiritual realm. So There are some good channels on YouTube that talk about the eternal abodes of the gods called the Lokas, and some of these people can definitely explain this much better than I can. And there's one in particular that I'm thinking of. I can't recall the name of it. I'll see if I can find it later and drop a link in the description of the video, or maybe somebody in the chat on an off chance might know. It's got some Indian name. I think it starts with an R. The guy's British. He's got some really good visual aids to explain this stuff. So I'll try to find it. It's really interesting if you want to nerd out a little bit over it, but if you don't, it's definitely not necessary if you're just kind of wanting to understand the main message here, which is that if you want to reach God, you have to maintain a wholehearted devotion and always keep the mind and the heart fixed on God. Don't feel like you have to understand complicated theological and cosmological stuff just to be able to live a God-centered life. Krishna repeatedly emphasizes that it is devotion that is required, not a head full of book knowledge. So if you're not kind of a nerd who just wants to fill your head with all kinds of information, and you're just, a more simple person with a simpler life, that's totally fine. There's nothing inherently superior about having a head full of book knowledge, despite what a lot of people might tell you. So, moving on, I find this next bit very interesting. So he says, "Now, Arjuna, I will tell you the times at which men of yoga die and must be reborn, or die never to return. Fire, light, day, the moon's brightness, the 6 months of the north-turning sun. Dying then, men who are free go to absolute freedom. Smoke, gloom, night, the moon's darkness, the 6 months of the south-turning sun. Dying then, men of yoga reach the moon's light and return. These paths of light and of darkness have always existed. By one, a man will escape from rebirth. By the other, he is born again." I mean, these verses are just super interesting in my opinion because, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about death and the afterlife. Not to be overly morose or anything, but if you've watched the Revolt series, episode 9 on the 2 paths of the afterlife, this is directly related to that. So the path of the sun, the Devayana, or the path of the moon, the Pitrayana. If you've seen that episode, recall that the path of the sun is the one for those who achieve that Olympian heroic overcoming and have earned their place among the gods. And whereas those who don't do that end up on the path of the moon, where they're said to become food for the gods. They enter the cycle of death and rebirth, and then after a time, they're subsumed back into the ancestral totem. So, taken literally, these verses would suggest that only those who die when the sun is on its northward course, rising up to the Tropic of Cancer, could take the path of the sun, while those who die when the sun is on its descending course towards the Tropic of Capricorn would end up on the path of the moon. So, if a yogi has perfected himself, he could select the time and manner in which he leaves this world and choose an auspicious time for himself. But if you're just a mere mortal like the rest of us, then your success kind of almost depends on whether or not you accidentally pass away at a certain time, But for pure devotees of Krishna, it doesn't matter. They are not going to return regardless of when or how they die. So, taken symbolically, the moon and darkness indicates illusion, maya, ignorance. Those who are not spiritually realized are, of course, in a state of nescience. But the sun is emblematic of spiritual illumination. So if you've liberated yourself from the illusion of this world, and you've been practicing all the things that we've talked about before, like non-attachment and keeping God always fixed in your mind and whatnot, then maybe you qualify for the path of the sun. So in the Upanishads, I think, it says that if you live righteously, even if you have to take rebirth, you will be born to righteous parents. And if you live immorally, you end up being born as some kind of unclean animal. I personally don't believe in cross-species reincarnation, but that's what the Vedic literature says, and that's what we're here to talk about today, so we'll go with that. But in any case, how you live in this life does affect your next life. And even if you can't achieve liberation this time around, you want to give yourself a life next time where you will have a better shot, maybe be in circumstances where you're more supported in that endeavor. So, maybe you're doing a lot of virtuous things in this life, but you're not doing it with detachment. Maybe you're too focused on the rewards that you hope to get from your spiritual activities. Well, you have to have a rebirth. But as we talked about last time, the progress you made in this life does count for something. So if you're struggling with non-attachment to material outcomes, it's not what you should be doing, but it's not a disaster. You'll just get another lifetime to keep working on that. And then hopefully you'll be born into a life that is karmically conducive to more spiritual growth. Maybe part of the problem is that the lifetime that you're in right now is not karmically conducive to achieving liberation this time around for some reason or another. It happens, but it's a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone to a life that can offer you that. So even if you feel like you have zero hope in this life of achieving liberation, I don't think I personally have any hope of that. As you know, I'm gonna keep my expectations for myself pretty low. But you still want to do the best you can. You still want to aim for the stars. You still want to make progress on the path. Set yourself up as best you can for the next life, that you'll be able to continue on that progress. So, next page. So he ends with, knowing these two paths, Arjuna, the man of yoga at all times, resolute in his non-attachment, goes far beyond the merit gained from the study of the scriptures, from acts of worship or control or charity. Dying, he reaches the supreme primordial place. So Krishna ends with this, in many ways, just kind of summing up the essence of the Bhagavad Gita here. He's advising Arjuna not to be disturbed over these two paths, because the dedicated devotees of Krishna gain passage to the supreme abode no matter what. Devotional service to Krishna surpasses all the study of the scriptures, all the ritualistic forms of worship. It's not that you shouldn't do those things, but they're not an end in themselves. They're just simply tools that help you build a focus on God, but they don't in and of themselves replace devotion. If you aren't doing those things with sincere devotion, with non-attachment, you might gain knowledge of your capital S self, but you're not on the path of the sun. And this is part of why, I personally feel that it's not about the path that you choose and the specific set of practices or dogma that you adopt. It's about what's in your heart. It's about the virtue that you're cultivating. It's about the devotion you're giving to God. God doesn't care what name you give him or what church you go to. God cares whether or not you're devoted, whether or not you have a good heart, whether or not you're living virtuously. And religion and dogmas and ritual practices, that's all just a framework for us in which to practice that devotion. But maybe you don't have a framework that allows you, if what you're subscribing to, if the religion you're subscribing to isn't giving you a framework through which you can properly express devotion to God, then it's the wrong one for you. And this is why I'm just happy when people find a spiritual path, and I don't care which one they choose. There's some of you, well, I know some of the people who watch this channel will disagree with that, but that's my view, and it's my channel, so I'm gonna share that. So let's go to questions. I'll just scroll up in the chat and see what we've got here. I don't think there's too many people here today. I hope everybody's having just as nice of a day as I am outside, and they're out enjoying the weather. So maybe we won't have a ton of questions. All of these about the sound. I'm so sorry about that. Julius Flavius, nice to see you here. Don't you know, Kat, that in our linear time, humanity will reach perfection with our worldly progressivism? Transhumanist Gnosticism, that's all I can say. You guys will have to tell me if you're still getting fuzzy sounds on this. Julius again, how do you feel about your role in AA's game thingy? Academic agent, I don't know anything about this. What is the game? do I get a good part at least? Yeah, I'm okay. Let me just check and see. So it's still buzzing a little bit. Let's see if that. Let me know how that is. It's a real problem, and I have it with my other mic as well. So I'm upset to hear that this mic is now doing it, and I think it's the interface. Unfortunately, I think dropping it shook something loose. Because I had this weird issue with my headphones the other day, where one set of headphones would hear the whole song that was playing back in Logic, and the other one was everything but not the vocal track. And I was like switching them, and it's just like, what's going on here? I've never heard anything like that. So, all right. And some of it's probably because I'm like reading and not, like when I'm reading, I'm not really paying attention to how close I'm getting to the mic. So that's a bit of a problem too. All right, looking for questions. No, that's all I can say to that one. I am not in Mexico, but I'm sure it's probably nice weather there too. I've actually never been to Mexico. I knew people who would just go down there for like spring break partying and stuff. So in my mind, it's kind of, I don't know. To me, it just always seemed like the kind of place I wouldn't want to go because I wasn't the spring break type. Was the Renaissance degenerate? Yes, in many ways it was, because it was moving away from a spiritual understanding of the world to a materialist one. In short. Verb says, I have trouble not meditating. Staring at nothing is my default, especially when external stimulation is absent. The inverse is alien to me. Do you have an inner monologue? Sometimes I do, yeah. I mean, I have a very active mercurial mind, and so there's always stuff churning in there. I find I have trouble meditating actually because my mind is overactive, and it's very difficult to switch it off. It's always just jumping from one topic to the next, and they're often topics that will just like really grab my attention, and I'm like, oh, I actually do want to ponder that. No, stay focused on this, and it's why I'm reading like 10 or 20 different books all at the same time and making very little progress on hardly any of them. Nice, Julius Evola quote from Catholic Pog. Finally, the subversives proclaim the morality of precisely that man who affirms that mind and will have value only when they are reduced to servile instruments of the body. Well, I love how that bottle keeps my water cold all day long. It tastes so nice. Stainless steel bottles, you guys, much better for you than plastic. This is a good quote. It's, the mind and the will should not just serve the body, but this is what most people use them for. They're thinking about, how can I make my life more comfortable? How can I get more stuff to consume? It's all about like the material comforts of existence, right? And they put their mental capacities to work serving that instead of the other way around. It's just, sometimes I get to thinking about the state of the modern world and what people are like and how little hope any of them have. And I find it depressing and sad. Frank Brock, nice to see you here today, sir. Find joy in his creation as you pursue improvement in activities you enjoy that are pleasing to him. Meditation doesn't have to be a passive, sedentary pursuit. I absolutely agree with that. And I will say, as somebody who's, Evola says that in the Western world, the warrior archetype tends to predominate over the contemplative type. So, sorry, lip balm break. I can't go more than half an hour, and I've gone 40 minutes, so I just compulsive. Yeah. Evel is saying that the warrior type dominates in the West, and I think that's very true. I think that the lifestyle of sitting as an ascetic monk is, there will be people in the West who are suited to that, but I think most of us aren't. And some of that is going to be an effect of the modern world and the fact that we're all just dopamine fried and constantly looking for distractions. But the other part of it is just that we have a bit more of a Rajasic spirit, and that action, that energetic principle, it needs somewhere to go. You have to express that somehow, and you don't do that sitting and breathing. You need to move. And so, one of the best things that I ever learned, I used to do weight training with a guy who was completely unspiritual. But I learned a lot from him spiritually because of the way he taught me how to approach weightlifting. And it was a really valuable lesson for me, and it made me enjoy weightlifting actually a lot more, to the point that I would say it's almost like one of my favorite sports. I don't know if you call it a sport, but what he always would say was, connect the mind to the muscle, stay focused on what you're doing. Don't be letting your mind wander off onto other things between sets. Just be thinking about your next set and what you're going to do, and be visualizing the next set. And then when you're doing this set, you want to be fully present for it. And, I found that by having something to do with my body that I was intensely focused on, like just laser focused on what the body is trying to do, that in itself became a meditation, and it cleared my mind out in a way that sitting and focusing on my breath didn't. Anything can really serve as an object of meditation. Ideally, you want to be meditating on God, but you've got to train the mind first to be able to get to that point. And part of doing that is developing a laser focus in your mind. Like, for example, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I can't read, I don't have the attention span for it." I'm like, you don't have the attention span for it because your mind is like an untrained dog running all over the place. Put a leash on that thing. If you find that you're a person that can't read like more than a page without losing your focus on the book, like, that's a problem. Your mind is running amok. And so you need to gradually train your mind to have this laser focus so that you can tell it what to do. And when you want it to be quiet, it will be quiet. And if you can find that mental state through a physical activity, by all means do it. I don't think there would be anything wrong with that. I think any tool that you find that works for you to help you with this, use it. So thanks for that quote, Frank. That's a good one. All right, let's look for some more questions here. Yeah, no cross-species reincarnation. I would even venture so far as to say possibly not even cross-race. I don't think that, we can't really know, right? We can never really know because nobody comes back to tell us, and everybody's got their own ideas, but the Platonists, the late Platonists anyway, very vigorously argued against reincarnation into animals, and I generally agree with their reasoning behind it. I think, it follows more or less that because our soul's essential act is to be generative of a human body, it would create a spiritual disorderliness if it were possible for the soul to change its essential act into being generative of some other type of being. So since act and essence are sort of one and the same in the divine realm, for a soul to change its essential act is changing its very essence. So it's like if you have a branch of an oak tree suddenly trying to be a branch of a maple tree and to sprout flowers of a completely different species of plant, it just it doesn't compute. There's a spiritual disorderliness that results because the soul is not acting in accordance with its essence, with its dharma, really. So it's kind of like violating a cosmological law. That's my view anyway. If you guys have disagreements on that, let me know. It'd be an interesting topic for conversation. I'm open-minded about this stuff, but make me a good philosophical argument, and I'll always change my view if it adds up in my head. It adds up in my head. I'm not the best at math, so maybe that shouldn't be my criteria. Oh, goodness. All right, what do we got? All right. Nitin Sakti is saying cross-species reincarnation is possible, but actually unidirectional. That is, a snake can have a human birth in the next jama, but a human can't go back to a lesser form of the Brahman. All right, thank you for that. That's interesting. Be interested to know, I guess, kind of where you read that from. I'd read up on it more if you can give me a source. So, from iBlag8, a super chat. Thank you so much. All the best with the move, he says. Oh, I need it. Keep praying for me because it's not a done deal yet. It could still fall through. I'm glad you guys find the buzz relaxing. Super chat from Frank. Thank you so much. We appreciate your ongoing support of the show. Frank supports us on Patreon as well. And for anybody who didn't notice, the new Revolt episode is out finally after nearly a year. And I've been making good progress on the next episode already as well. So this move situation is kind of like throwing me for a loop here, and it came at a terrible time. But hopefully I can get situated and start working on that again. And Nathan says, I've seen your discussion with Acharya in part on the Gita. Hopefully you aren't using the translation of it from the ISKCON group. I do have that translation, but I'm using Stephen Mitchell's translation. I don't love the ISKCON translation. It's okay. I mean, you still get the gist of it. But, you got to find one that resonates with you. I understand, though, that, of course, the translations are going to come maybe from the perspective of a particular sampradaya, or there might be some other bias introduced in it. Again, always good to read multiple. Tame your monkey cat. What does that mean? Did you actually see a monkey outside? Because sometimes they do come here, but not usually this close to this room. Or if it means something dirty, I don't want to know. That just occurred to me that maybe it means something bad. Kyle still uses the meditation video. I recommend it. Thank you. I'm so glad you like it. I really need to get on doing a longer version. And I'll tell you guys something funny. About a year ago, I was thinking of making a longer version of that. And I don't normally have super vivid dreams that I remember, but in this case I did. And I had a dream of what this meditation should be. And I got up at like 4 a.m. and wrote it all out and then went back to bed. And then when I woke up again, like for the day, I looked at it and I was like, wow, this is weird. Like, I don't know what would happen to somebody if they actually did that as a meditation. So I never did anything more with it. And I recently looked at it again because I was trying to find a file, and that one had a similar name. So I opened it and I read through it again, and I was like, yep, still just as weird as I thought it was last year. So I'll have to come up with something else. Stainless steel bottles, as I said, I like this one because it comes with like this little rubberized straw thing, so you don't damage your teeth on it, like if you're trying to drink from it in the car. But there's also a straw attached inside, so you don't have to tip it up to try to drink from it. You just sip on it. And it's and they come in pretty colors, which, if I'm being honest, that's the real reason I chose it. Yeah, I've wondered this too. I wonder if the warrior dominates as a priestly caste couldn't pass on their genes. I do think that's part of it. The decision of the Catholic Church to try to enforce celibacy, I think, probably affected that. But I would also say that even prior to that, I think we still saw a predominance of warrior-based cultures in the West. I can't off the top of my head think of a Western culture that was predominantly contemplative oriented rather than action oriented. And this is why people say, oh, forget the Bhagavad Gita, it's not part of our culture. Why are you reading Indian stuff when you're not Indian? And it's like, well, it's not Indian for one. It's descended from a Hyperborean lineage that, all of us in the West share in. And it is it's a handbook to the path of action that's very, very suited to us. I don't care if you want to call your God Krishna or something else or whatever. What is being taught in this, the mentality and the mindset, is ideal for people of a warrior nature. And it is in walking this path that is laid out that one comes to a synthesis of the path of action and the path of contemplation, ultimately resulting in, what we might call the sacred king archetype, which is basically absolute man. So I disagree with these people who say that, oh, you shouldn't be reading some other culture's sacred text. I mean, it's not solely belonging to the Indian subcontinent there. These truths are eternal. It doesn't matter like the external aesthetic that we give to it. That's just like trappings on it so that we humans can understand it and make sense of it. Kyle has a book recommendation, The Warrior's Way by Robert DeRock. That sounds like an interesting book. I haven't heard of that. I might look for that. All right. Not a ton of questions today, but some really good comments I've been seeing. Oh, so you meant the monkey brain. Okay. Well, I don't, I thought it could be dirty because sometimes people do say things that are dirty, and I don't always pick up on it, and I sit there taking it seriously or misinterpreting it, and then you guys get a good laugh at my expense. Not that I mind you laughing at my expense, because laughter's good, and I'm happy to be a catalyst for somebody's laughter if it brightens your day in any way. All right. So it looks like we're kind of coming up here to the end. I'll put in a last call for any questions or comments, but we're coming up on an hour here. And since I'm flying solo today, I figured it would be a bit of a shorter stream. And I have big plans to go, and I don't know. I don't even know what my big plans are yet. Sit in the pool. I don't know, something outside in the sun, get some vitamin D. I'm looking a bit pale these days. Too much time inside. So, all right. Well, this will be the last Gita live stream until I get moved and settled in a new house and get the internet sorted out, because as it stands, the internet there is too slow to do something like this, so we'll need to make an upgrade. Hopefully that won't take too long, it won't be too much trouble, and we'll get it up and running with, potentially better internet quality than what I've currently got. And, I'll be able to quickly get my books unpacked again and get back to work on the next Revolt episode. If you haven't seen episode 12, check it out. It looks really great. George put in a ton of work on it, and it's, he gets better and better at this stuff every time. I'm consistently blown away by the quality of the audio and visual that he puts into it, and we're definitely looking forward to releasing another one. So, all right, my last call for questions did bring in one. Do you encounter the same environments or individuals in your dreams? Do you mean like recurring dreams? Because I do have recurring dreams, and they're typically the only ones that I think are worth paying attention to. In general, I would say that dreams are largely just mental garbage. But when it's a recurring dream, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, there's something there in the psyche that I kind of need to address or pay attention to. And I've had a number of different recurring dreams over the course of my life, and what I've noticed is that once I figure out what it's trying to convey, and I kind of unpack like the weird dream symbolism into something that I can actually understand, I never have the dream again after that. It's like the mind just keeps throwing this up and saying, look at this, solve this, I don't understand this. Like something in the unconscious, subconscious mind or whatever that's trying to be made conscious, but like you don't understand quite how to look at it or process it. So yeah, I find that kind of interesting. And I have known people who never have recurring dreams, so I don't know if like it's just a certain type of mind that produces that or not. I had a client who works in like dream science basically, and um, maybe one of these days I can invite him on to talk about something like that. So okay, well that I think would wrap it up. And thank you, Kyle. I'm so glad you liked the last episode. I think you've been watching since the very beginning too, if I remember right. So we appreciate your continued support on that. And new Uber Folk album. Oh, that's a good question. So we have heard back from one of the musicians we did Music for Nations with, and he's told us he's ready to go now and wants to start doing a new album. We also have maybe 5 or 6 songs in the work that would be for a metal album. So it'll be a question of like how we decide to prioritize these, whether we want to work on them concurrently or just finish one first and then the other. But I think we'll probably be releasing new songs as they come available. And of course, we'll have new songs with the Revolt episodes as well. So yeah, and Nathan says, found your channel through Arvel. Thank you for your Evola vids. Never got around to reading Revolt Against the Modern World, as Ride the Tiger was a bit hard to read. Well, hopefully you can get through Revolt with the help of the videos, but I do think Revolt is easier, and I'm glad to hear you came from Arvel's channel. He's a good guy. If you guys aren't familiar with Arvel, he's got a small channel, but he has some really good quality stuff. He's, primarily discussing Platonism and perennialism. He's also got some really good reading groups on Plato's works. So if you'd like to take a deep dive into Platonism, contact Arvel about that. I join in those groups sometimes. I like to listen. I can't usually like do the chat because I'm often doing other things, but I listen and go back and reread, and he's a very good teacher. So I'll give him a shout out because he was kind enough to have me on his channel, and maybe I should have him online one of these days. A nice super chat from Thunderstorm. Thank you so much. What do you think of Robert Seffer's work? His videos are interesting. And I mean that maybe both in the positive and the negative sense. I used to watch a lot of his videos, and I would often find them hard to follow, and I would get frustrated because he never cites sources for anything. So he doesn't provide a pathway for you to look deeper into things beyond his channel or to verify what he's saying. And that always bothered me a little bit. So I'm like, oh, the topics he's talking about are so interesting. I really want to know more about this. But then I feel like this doesn't seem to me, it just doesn't meet my standards as an authoritative source, because he doesn't allow, anybody to question and leave criticism on his comments. I've heard of people getting their comments deleted for that, and I thought, oh, that's a bit iffy. And he's not telling you where he's getting his source material from or what his line of reasoning is for coming to these conclusions that he's presenting as fact. And I like to be able to fact check stuff for myself. So I would say, look, it's a great and interesting channel if you want to introduce people to these subjects and spark their curiosity. The way he presents them is often really conducive to sparking the imagination and kind of taking you off into a flight of fancy that makes you really interested in looking into more and wanting to know, like, could this really be true, because they're such amazing ideas. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag of his work for me, but I know a lot of people like it, and I can't say anything bad about the guy or anything. I don't know him, and I'm glad that he has such a large channel to kind of introduce people to these ideas. I'm sure many people have come to his channel. It was the first time they've ever been exposed to say something about Atlantis or something, and it might have taken them off onto a lifetime trip down a rabbit hole, which can be really fun. So yeah, and thank you again, Thunderstorm. I see you often in our Telegram chat too, so I appreciate how engaged you are with the community. Anything else? Yeah, if only we had a good translation of Plotinus. It's hard to get good translations of any of this stuff. You know, I would go a step further and say, if only we all were born speaking the ancient languages fluently. Okay, this is an interesting little fact from Nathan. We in southern India don't really agree with the idea of the Vedas and the Hindu tradition to be necessarily from the north. Yeah, I am aware of that. To me, that's kind of a superfluous cultural divide that, you know, I obviously coming from a more traditionalist Egolian perspective that's sort of tracing the descent of the Hyperborean lineage. I do think Evola makes a pretty good case for these things being from the north. That said, as the Vedas stand now, there are a lot of southern elements that have entered into them, and so now you've got kind of a mix, which is what you also saw happening in Greece and Rome. The north and the southern cultures clashed, and you ended up with a mixed culture, basically. So the original multiculturalism, right? But yeah. All right. Well, it's been fun hanging out with you guys. I'm glad I was able to squeeze one more of these in before I have to move. And I'll see you guys on Telegram, I guess. I might try to start using Gab more these days, but you'll probably have to nag me about it. And check back in the description. I'll see if I can find the link to that other channel that I was trying to think of. So, all right, we will wrap it up there. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Get out and enjoy the sunshine if you're lucky enough to have some, and if not, go run in the rain because that's fun too. All right, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.